This is Nodar from Fallahin Fall, and you're listening to the Dan Chan Show.
I'm joined by Nodar from Brooklyn, New York, industrial slash gothic metalers, Fellahin Fall. Have I said that right? How are you doing tonight?
Fallahin Fall, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Yeah, Gothic Industrial, that's the name of the game here in South
That's
Brooklyn.
absolutely. And then obviously are you currently in Brooklyn now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right out of my little home studio that I got over here in my,
Now,
my house.
obviously home to gothic juggernauts, typo negative. It must be some influence there for you because obviously when I saw Brooklyn, I saw you guys and I heard your sound. I was like, there must be some green man in there somewhere.
Absolutely. And what's funny is that typo negative, like the guys, so in their songs, I know if you know My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, he talks about I'm
Of
walking hand in
course.
hand down
Yeah.
King's Highway. King's
Yeah.
Highway is like 10 minutes from here. I've
No
walked
way.
down that avenue a million times. Like where I used to go to high school, the guys all live like within I don't know, within like 10 minutes of the school, and like we used to practice at in my previous band at a studio called Fast Lanes. It doesn't exist anymore, but after Pete's passing, a lot of the guys in their side projects, they would stop by so we'd see them. So like, in terms of typo and South Brooklyn, like particularly,
Yeah.
like it's to say that it casts a shadow would be an understatement.
I had a moment with Pete Steele in at Rock City in Nottingham, which is a real famous UK venue, and it was in Kerrang magazine. And there's a picture of Pete Steele with his hands around my neck, and it made Kerrang magazine. It was the coolest picture ever. He was such a cool guy.
And I'm absolutely, and obviously, of course, like you can hear sometimes, and in some songs more than others, but you definitely hear their influence in our music. You don't get into gothic rock or in any way, shape, or form without having some of Pete's and Typo Negative's like influence on you.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about this talk about potentially doing some kind of tribute to Typo? I don't know. It's not. This isn't about Typo negative, and I've had Johnny Kelly on the show and friend of the show. But what's your opinion of them doing something that could potentially, reignite that?
I think it's their project. It's as a band, I think it's up for them to decide. I think it's very so personal that it's hard for me as a fan to say, regardless of what I feel. Like I can say yeah, I could say no. Being on the flip side as a musician, I think it should be their decision. So,
Yeah, yeah, of
I'm
course.
always down for it. I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah,
down
yeah,
for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it would be awesome, but I think it's there. It should be left to them. And
Sure, sure, sure. So let's get into you guys. I mean, I found you. We just said off record that I think I found you on some kind of advert or something, and I heard the track post you. And firstly, before we get into the music, can we talk about how before we talk about the future, should we say? Can we talk about your past and how the band formed and everything like that?
Absolutely. So I think it really goes back to my previous band, Finnemore, and the last show we ever played. So we wound up getting the opening slot for Swallow the Sun and Dark Tranquility in
Wow,
Gramercy Theater here in New
wow,
York City. Yeah, we were like
great,
a Death Doom outlet. So
wow.
it was like the show, it was basically what you dream of with that kind of lineup.
Mm, mm,
But afterwards, we wanted to things weren't working out. We kind of wanted to go in a slightly different direction. And I had been writing all these like songs on my synthesizer, all these keyboard songs. And I'm like, hey, as I start to go along, I'm like, you know what? I think I can, make something out of this. So I call up the drummer, which happens to be my brother, Eugene, and
cool.
then the previous guitar player, Raphael. And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of working on something. And show them some of these scratch tracks. They love it. Eventually, I don't know if you know the band Tanger Cavalry,
Mm,
where he also unfortunately passed recently. So the guitar player from that, Patrick Riley, I show him the tracks as well, and he loves it. So, here we are in 2019, 2020, about to release the album, and then boom, the world kind of shuts down for for a couple of years. Obviously not a laughing matter for some people, and really not a laughing matter for me either. But nonetheless, it coincided with that. Here we are, ready to release. I think we dropped our first single, "Of Fallen Words." Let's say it was October of 2019. We play our first show sometime in February and March. It just shuts down.
hmm
The album was already set to be released, so we wind up releasing it in May. But basically, we sit on our hands for the next 2.5 years or so.
Right.
And out comes the end of 2023. We start playing shows again, and we decide to release an EP that we had been writing called Urbana that we had been writing over the course of the pandemic, and it's a four-song EP with a Woods of Be Pre cover on there. And that did really really well for us. And it's like, yeah, it's to kind of get reinvigorated. And in the meantime, I'm writing all these songs. I'm always playing on my synthesizer. This laptop is on a synth as we speak. It's just the only way to position it on
Mm.
this
Yeah.
in the studio. But I start writing this slightly more. I don't want to call it dancey, but more like industrial. Because you hear the bass line through post two. It's very very
Mm.
synthy. I'm like, oh, I think should this be on an album? Does it make sense? And I'm like, I think this is a great single. So we kind of get to writing and recording and laying down the tracks, and that's where we find ourselves today.
Right. Amazing. So the rest of the guys, so your brothers in the band, who are the two guys?
Drummer. So we have our my brother Eugene on the drums, Raphael, my former rhythm guitarist, he's playing rhythm here, and our on lead guitars we have Patrick Riley from Tanger Cavalry.
Brilliant. So the band name, it took me a few looks to get my head around it to try and get the name. Where does it come from?
So I was reading a book, right, and they started talking about these North African peasants, and they call them, I guess, the Fellahin, right?
Hmm.
And they were kind of like these people out, kind of functioning outside of history. They just kind of existed, there. And I'm like, hey, here I am in New York City, surrounded and in some ways crushed by the concrete. One of the great things about New York City is that you can disappear, you can live your whole
Mm.
life and not be a figment of someone's imagination due to the size and obviously, you say you're from England, and probably London feels much in the same way, but you can really disappear in these giant,
Mm.
giant cities.
Mm.
So I also kind of felt like wandering through the city as this kind of, I don't want to say like peasant, but that like when I read that paragraph about the Fallahin, it made me think, I'm like, damn, in a similar way, here I am in the West, experiencing something like that, kind of this like aimless wandering in a way, and that kind of gave me that inspiration. Originally, the band was actually going to be called Fellahin West,
Mhm.
that I'm in the West, but I didn't want something so on the nose, so I made a Fallahin Fall meaning like the season, like autumn.
So what made you choose the direction you did with regards to music? What were your influences, as a kid growing up, getting into music? Obviously, we've mentioned typo, but what else?
So of course, obviously Typo Negative, you had a lot of like the more radio friendly stuff that I grew up with Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then in the early 2000s, I wind up discovering, I guess, goth like club music. You're talking like V&V Nation, Assemblage 23,
Mm.
Combi Christ, like Suicide
Mm.
Commando, those kind of groups, which is, much more, I just want to say it's almost dancey music with harsh vocals, right? Aggro tech, as it's sometimes called.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and listening to so much of that in my like high school and early college years, it kind of really kind of had that imprint. So I've always been trying to marry those two styles, and you kind of hear it in bands like the Browning a little bit. I don't know if you know that band, but they also do kind of like a techno
Right.
metal. Now ours is not so pronounced. I
Hmm.
still want it to be a little bit more on that gothic metal side rather than that strictly like club dancing
Hmm.
side, but you do hear a lot of synth layering on our music, and it really comes from there.
Hmm. And I remember seeing Combi Christ support Rammstein. Where were you with Rammstein?
Oh, of course, obviously I'm mentioning all these like smaller bands. Of course, obviously Rammstein was a huge, huge influence, and obviously I mentioned, from my Death Doom days, bands like Swallow the Sun,
Mm.
Draconian,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Paradise
Paradise
Lost,
Lost, gonna say.
My Dying Bride, like
Yeah.
were huge influences on me early on as well. When you speak out of it strictly from like a metal side.
Yeah. So you're the main guy, the lyric guy, the music guy. What do you like to write your lyrics about? What are you talking about?
So I think, a lot of times when you deal with lyrics or when you deal with songwriting, there are like melody people and there are lyric people. So when
Mm.
I listen to a song, even songs that I love, sometimes I can't even tell you what they're about in terms of like what are the lyrics. I only listen to lyrics in their impact on the melody and the way that they're delivered. The lyric in and of itself is almost a secondary thing. I really truly do believe that once a song is out there, you as a listener, your interpretation of it is correct. So
Mm.
I may sing about, let's say, red roses, and you think it's about yellow submarines, then it's about yellow submarines. I really, really,
Mm.
really strongly believe that you as a listener that kind of subjective understanding of a song. No one can tell you how you should feel about a
Sure.
song.
Sure.
And sometimes you hear bands, they get really I think ticked off when someone is misinterpreting the song, but it's just like, look, guys, I believe there's no misinterpreting the art form.
Yeah.
Um,
Clever.
Even if I were to tell you, let's say I wrote Post You, and Post You's a little bit of it's a little bit of an ironic song. It's a little bit of a jokey song, right? It jokes about living forever, but like kind of getting bored of it, right? It talks about that. But if someone else interprets the song to mean anything else, that's true too. I write the lyrics at the very end. Most of my songs are actually written with like humming and a lot of me's and b's and you's and
Mm.
just I'm just like enunciating things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything up until the very end when I finally get into that studio. Then I take out my little notepad. I usually do it on my phone, and I start writing lyrics. Like, what do I feel? Like, I know what I feel when I write a song, but what am I actually trying to sing about? And that happens at that very last, like the last step in the songwriting process.
That's interesting. So, but what about when you get creative to start that process? Do you have to be in a certain space, or did it just happen when you're driving or in a car or in a supermarket? Can it just hit you?
So there are many writers who are like that. They're like, hey, I dreamt of a melody. Oh, I'm
Mm,
feeling a melody. With
mm,
me, it's in a way, maybe it's less romantic. I need to sit down in front of a piano or with an acoustic guitar and just play. I'll be frank, play garbage for 2 or 3 hours and then something. It's like, oh,
fancy.
yeah, there we go. That's something else. That for some reason that clicks.
So, what do you predominantly go for keyboards to find it, or is it guitar?
So I would say 90% of the time it is keyboard.
Right.
Everything is done off keyboard. I just like having access to the four voices like in
Mm,
both my hands right away. It just gets me, I think, a clearer picture of either a melody I'm playing or a chord progression. Although I will say sometimes it is the guitar. Sometimes I'll play and I'll just like start strumming along, strumming some chords and start humming a melody. And it's like, oh, and then I'll reimagine it as like a metal song, a goth
mm,
song, maybe a
mm.
little bit of a dance song or something like that.
So do you listen? Do you write with the listener in mind? Like imagine like what you want to listen to as a fan? Because you seem to be a kind of guy that knows what he likes. Do you listen to think I'd love to listen to that track?
So I mean, like, frankly, I think yes, that is definitely the case. But I think everyone writes that way, whether or not like some people will say, no, I don't write for anyone but myself, but you
Uh,
yourself are a listener as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's that like Cartesian kind of thing. Like you are still, that is something still that is occurring to you. So you are still receptive of it. So anyone who says that they don't write with a listener in mind, that's not entirely true because at the end of the day, you are your own listener.
Exactly.
So yes, I do write with a
Yeah,
listener in
I
mind.
like that perspective because I speak to a lot of bands. I'm like, no, I'm selfish. I write for me. It's like if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But it's nice to hear, a proper like truthful answer. I totally agree with that. So let's go through your releases. You've released a bunch of singles, EPs. The album I think was in 2020, wasn't it? Obviously during COVID,
The pandemic.
Tarakan, right? So that
Yeah.
was, troublesome in itself, being in such a bad time. But it gave people the chance to listen to tracks because they had the time. And now we've got Post You, which came out what, like a month ago now. Great track,
Yeah.
most infectious track. You heard it before we chatted. So where's it going now? What's happening? That is that a standalone, or are we leading into something for the future here?
So, I think that this track will probably stay as a standalone.
Right.
Um, because of its nature, I think that our other music is a little bit more doomy, a little bit
Yeah,
more on
yeah,
the
yeah,
slower end.
yeah.
But we are definitely writing a second album. We definitely want to follow this up. I think it's actually been a month and one day. We released it on the 24th of
Yeah,
October,
that's right. Yeah,
it's 25th of November. So, it's actually been an amazing experience, very humbling. Again, when you release something and then, fans start to show you that love, that respect, that admiration, that the kind words, that all, it's a great feeling. And it's, you don't need like we just spoke about, you don't need someone else to kind of tell you your music is good or bad or whatever, but it sure does, sure does
yeah, of
feel nice when someone
course.
goes, this track, it really hit me. Like some comments are saying that I want to write a song like this. It's like, well, that's pretty amazing, to hear from someone. So we are writing, like what are we doing next? We are writing a second album. I am finishing it up. I'm almost
That's
done.
great.
We have about, I'm gonna say 10 songs. We cut probably like 30 of them. I think
Yeah,
we
yeah,
came
yeah,
down to
yeah.
about 10. Yeah, and like, in terms of writing, it's always like that. You write so much, I don't want to say garbage, but so much things that you don't really want to put out there. Sometimes, you hear artists like, oh, I can't wait to hear that unreleased stuff. It's like, you really don't want to hear the unreleased stuff. Trust me. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
unreleased.
yeah. I get it. Did you know with Post Due that it was a bit of a special track?
Well, I knew that it was certainly a little bit more I don't say uplifting, but it's more energetic than where we generally place our songs. We are
Mm,
much more, especially like the album with Tara Khan. It was a much more pessimistic track. A lot of cyberpunk influences. It was a concept album. I wanted to imagine myself 30, 40 years in the future. Kind of the blending of in some ways, like kind of a trope, cyberpunk trope, where you have the blending of man and machine, and kind of the loss of your kind of humanity through that
mm,
the tracks that I've written since that point are they're not as thematic, right? They're not conceptual like that, but they are still kind of on that slow side and that doomy side. It just that's what I drift to naturally. So when I did write Post You, right away felt that it was a little bit outside of what we generally write, and that's why I felt the single was a great place for this track.
do you think that's where you'll go writing wise? Maybe just like ebb and flowing, bit of a roller coaster, or do you think this track is like invigorated you to think a little bit outside of your natural box?
So I think, there's always evolution. There's always evolution to artists. Like, yeah, there are some, I think, AC/DC tends to write in a very kind of familiar way, album after album, and there's nothing wrong with that. Other groups, say Marilyn Manson, I think every single one of his albums sounds quite significantly different from the last. Some people like that, some people don't.
Mm.
I think we probably fall somewhere in between. Anything you hear from us will still be Fellahin Fall. You'll recognize it, but you're not going to hear Tara Khan again. You
Mm,
probably won't
mm.
hear Urbana again.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, it definitely. I definitely think of it that way. It's definitely evolution.
awesome. Now it's a great video for Post You. Do you enjoy that? The face paint and the whole corpse paint thing and the whole like atmosphere of the video, which is awesome. Do you enjoy doing that?
Absolutely. I think, I had a story I want to tell. So I imagine, sometimes you hear with metal bands like this is not metal enough, that's not metal enough. So I'm like, hey, what if what if we, it's like, well, what is metal enough? Sometimes you hear these arguments and they seem kind of sophomoric, but like we were like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make fun of it a little bit. I'm gonna have these two witches. They're gonna kidnap us. They're gonna give us something called quell juice, and it's gonna turn us into, these real, like, kind of real quell metal guys. And so we get fed the quell juice. We get
Yeah,
the black metal face paint, and here we are playing like a goth techno-y kind of metal track in the vein of typo. So it's a little bit, obviously a little bit tongue in cheek, playing with that idea, kind of making fun of the whole, not of black metal itself, but of the discussion about, what
sure.
it takes to be real metal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't, yeah, I don't really like that conversation. What is real metal, especially given how sonically diverse metal as a whole really is. You can go from
sure.
black to power
Yeah.
to drone metal, which
Mm,
and you'll get everything in between.
hmm. I agree. Now, show wise, are you prolific doing shows? I can't see anything of you doing any shows. What is the situation with doing gigs?
So we did play a few gigs in September and October. We generally stay with the tri-state area, so that's the northeast of the United States, around Boston, DC, New York
Hmm.
City, of course,
Yeah.
Philly.
Mhm.
Um, Beyond there, it has to make, like with any band and
Financial
with the
sense.
size of,
Yeah, of
yes,
course.
exactly, especially with the size of the United States. Sometimes you do get asked to go
Mm,
play up in Seattle or in California, but it's it's
yeah.
it's
It's a,
4,000 miles to
it's
California.
it's 11 hours. What, 10 hour, 8 hour flight? Is it something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. And it's,
Like
it's not so easy. You want to put all your
it's
equipment
like
on
it's
on
like
a
me saying
plane.
I'm gonna do a gig in New York. You know what I mean? It's the
Yeah,
equivalent. You know what I mean? It's mad for
yeah,
me.
it's not so easy. I know a lot of bands do it, but it's tough. It's got to make financial sense. But with the band growing all the time, there are always more and more opportunities. Like we recently played
Mhm.
with Contra Cult, which
Ah, yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. No, cool. I've had them on the show. Travis, yeah.
yeah, okay. So yes, so if you know Travis, we played
Years
with them a
ago.
few shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, really great guys, really great band. If I don't know if people have heard of them, obviously you
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
but it's really great guys. So we've played with them. So we really try to be selective about our shows. And when I was in my previous band, you just kind of played, right? And that was enough. That was cool enough. Now, as I'm a little older, you want to be selective. You want to make sure that you're curating some of these shows, right?
Course,
Because
of course.
you want, as you do want to take the listener into account when they show up to a Fallahin Fall show. It has to make sense. So with Contra Cult, it made a lot of sense. You kind
Mm.
of hear this, like, this is it's goth night, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
yeah, yeah,
metal
yeah.
focused, but it's goth music. That doesn't mean that we won't play with goth. Of course, we'll play with other artists, and we have like a great kind of like a mellow death scene here in New York, which we play. And obviously, I believe all metal is kind of adjacent to itself,
Mm.
but you do want to try and curate the shows. So we will
Sure.
play, but shows that I think that are going to make a little bit more sense for
What
us.
what do you prefer? I mean, obviously, you're such a creative guy in yourself. Do you prefer studio or stage? Do you do music to play live, or do you do, you know, do you like the studio?
Yeah, so is it more like a vanity project? No, I think it's it's obviously a little bit of both, but I think if push comes to shove, I do like the process of creation more
Mm.
so than the stage. I I do love the stage. I do love performing, but I think being in the studio, really kind of getting these melodies out, these choruses, these bridges, really trying to experiment with sounds. Sometimes I'll sit on a synthesizer for 5, 6 hours just going through the sound bank, editing the sounds. I'm like,
Mm,
does this make
mm.
sense? And sometimes you'll spend a whole day on it,
Well, the
and
amount of plugins these days, you can literally
yeah,
spend your whole life just going, that could be better, that could be better, that could be better.
exactly. And I think obviously, not to plug them, but Omnisphere just released their third Omnisphere 3, which probably has another 20,000 sounds. So
That's, yeah,
yeah.
you know, me, it's mad. So, let's, what, let's, what I was going to ask you was if you prefer the studio, but people on stage get the applauds and get the crowd buzz, do you go looking for, say, reviews? Do you go and check them out and see what people are saying about you?
Not really. Usually we have one of our members in the band likes to do that, so we'll kind of get it
Right, wait
secondhand
for
while
him.
getting
You
some.
like you
Yeah,
filter it out
yeah,
for you.
they like to do that. Me personally, not really. Because sometimes you'll read something negative, you read something positive. It's I'm just happy someone's saying something, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think there's really like I'm part of there is no real bad press. And you like because I think sometimes it's worse. No reaction is better that is worse than a bad reaction because at least a bad reaction is so visceral someone decided to write something
Yeah,
negative about it.
yeah,
When you're
yeah.
just doing kind of things that are meh, you won't even or just like that's pretty good. You won't even bother commenting. So maybe like I said, maybe something negative is better than something neutral. And obviously
Sure.
something positive would be
Yeah,
best.
I get that. I get that. I get that. So I've got some fun questions now. You ready for some fun questions? I think you can handle them.
Let's do it.
Okay. What's one thing everyone should try at least once?
Ooh, I really think you should try to actually perform something in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
You should do it. I don't like if you need to go out and
Karaoke.
karaoke, read a poem. I
Yeah.
think that exposure, I remember one of the first bigger shows I played. I felt like I was gonna vomit before I came on stage.
That's the best
For
way
sure.
because afterwards you
Yeah.
feel like amazing, don't you? After you've done your
You know
set.
what it is? If you're practicing, I'll never forget it. It was actually a Gramercy Theater show, funny enough. But it was my first time playing in front of like at that point it was like maybe 600 people
Mm,
that night, and I was playing keyboards, and I just felt like I was gonna vomit. But within like playing two or three chords, you have that rehearsal that kicks in. And he's like, "Hey, this is no different than playing in front of, you
mm.
know, five people or
Yeah,
just the sound
exactly.
guy at a bar,
Exactly.
which is what you've done." So that kind of like, so many people are so afraid of the stage, but it manifests itself in other aspects of their life
Yeah,
that I think being able to handle that or do something like that is really important.
of
Everyone should do
course.
it once. Yeah.
So, if you could know the truth to one question, what would it be?
The truth to one question. Oof.
Deep,
That's
man.
a
It's
good one.
fucking deep.
Yeah, the truth to one question.
And
Huh.
you live in the States, mate. There should be fucking shitloads of things you should be waiting Francis for.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that the truth to one question is sometimes, you ask this is, do I really love what I do in terms of musically specifically? Because I think as I've, spent a lot of time, I think actually a lot of band members, they don't actually like it. So,
Mm,
it's funny enough, they don't actually
mm,
like the music.
mm.
Like they're just kind of
I've been in situations like that in bands I've been in. You know,
Yeah,
like,
you
do I really
realize
like this? I feel comfort. I'm in like a comfort zone now, and I don't really like what we're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I mean like strictly from like do you actually even want to play music? Like I think some people just get kind of you ever know like you get picked up by a tide, whether it be at work and you just kind of
Mm,
ended up as a on this career track. But I think the same thing happens with music. Like, you wound up gigging with some, some other band members, and when you're 18 and then all of a sudden you're just still playing at 25, that's just what you do. It's
mm.
not so much because you want it to be,
You get
being,
carried away with
rhyming.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like so sometimes I ask myself, I'm like, do I actually like want this? Do I re and I don't like I think I do, right? That's why
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
That's why you're here, man.
right.
That's why we're talking
But
right now. Of course.
there are definitely like sometimes I will just ask myself. So I wonder if like, if there's like a, tear down all the barriers and ask yourself, is this
Sure.
really what you're going to be doing?
Okay, here you go. What would your right now? What would your autobiography be called?
Phew. Oh, my autobiography be called? It would probably be called like Concrete Shadows.
That's
That would
good. That's
be
good. That's where'd that come from? That's great, mate. You got it.
Yeah, Concrete Shadows. Living in New York City, I've taken the subway for, let's say 20 years now, since I was like a young kid. And like I said in the beginning, you can just get lost here. You can really be
Yeah,
nobody.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Exactly.
both liberating and
Mm.
and
And
deeply scary.
scary as well. Yeah, for sure. Now, if you could steal credit for one piece of art, song, film, book, whatever, what would you say that you created?
Oh, what would I like to steal? Man, when I was younger, it was gonna be, and obviously I mentioned them, it was gonna be Mechanical Animals by Marilyn Manson. I thought that album, the
Uh,
Bowie influences,
yeah.
that kind of like the electronica, but at the same time, I don't know, just something when I heard it, I was like, man, can I ever write like some of those songs? And to this day, when I listen to it, I was just like, this is a brilliant song, and I like from the arrangement all the way to the lyrics to the melodies. So obviously, it comes from my youth, but I always wanted like I'm like, damn, I wanted to write an album like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, if you could choose one track to play every time, this is important, every time you walk into a room for the rest of your life, what track would it be?
Which Fellahin Fall track would I want to play?
No, no, any track. I mean, literally. I mean,
It'll probably be Black Number One by Typo.
it's class. That's a good one. That's a good one. Of course, of course. Now, which fictional character do you identify the most with and why?
Which fictional character? It's hard to say because I don't really like identify with too many fictional characters. Um, I think that one got me. I can't say that I identify with fictional characters too
Fine.
much.
We can move on. We can move on. Okay,
Yeah,
this is a really interesting one. I love getting people's opinion on this one. What is your most unpopular musical opinion?
unpopular musical opinion. I think a lot of people, okay, maybe this is popular nowadays, but I think, people say pop music is easy. Writing pop song, I hear it all the time.
Huh?
If you can write, and I always say the same thing, I'm like, look, if you can write a pop song and you think it's easy, go make the $1 million. Go write a
Mm,
pop song, go do
yeah.
it. There is, I think people don't understand how difficult it is to truly write. I don't mean a bad imitation of pop song.
And
Anyone can
good
write a bad
melody and
imitation,
everything like that. What's your opinion
but
of
to
Taylor
actually
Swift? What's your Taylor Swift opinion? Lady Gaga.
That's it right there. That's it right there. Is that if you like, look, I personally do not listen to Taylor Swift,
No.
but if you think it's so simple to do what she's doing, then make them billions, make
Yeah.
millions, go do it. Like,
Yeah.
someone is willing to give you millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's the same thing when you hear sometimes bravado. It's like I could probably beat up Mike Tyson. People are paying you millions of dollars to go do it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can go
yeah,
put on,
yeah.
if you
Yeah,
can go put on
sure.
a pair of boxing gloves, and they will pay you to beat people up
Yeah.
if
You
you
could
are
have a go
confident.
now, though. You might have a chance now. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, you may have a chance now, exactly. But it's something like that with music in general. If you think pop music is easy to do, then please there are millions upon millions, and there's
Yeah.
world stardom
And
that is
you
at
can
your
release music tonight. If you wanted to write the track, you can do it right now. You don't got to wait for a label. Okay, here's my next question. Who do you think is the new legacy band? Who's the next legacy band? Who are we going to be going to stadiums in about 10, 15, 20 years time and watching?
Legacy band right now in 2025, I
Yeah,
think.
the future. If we're talking about the future, we're seeing Metallica, we're seeing Rammstein headline. Who we're going to be seeing in 10, 15 years' time on those stadium shows?
So I think regardless of what you think of them, and I just think their album success,
You're laying it
their
out for me. You're laying it out for me. Go on, give it to me. Who is
yeah,
it?
I don't think like a lot of people don't particularly like they get some hate online. I think it's partly because they're so successful, but I really think Sleep Token is the
Right.
band right now that like there's no I just can't imagine like I'm not saying you have to love them or you think they're amazing, but
What these elements of you with like is a bit of sleep token sprinkled just on top of you guys?
I like Sleep Token. I'll be honest. I like Sleep Token. I thought Take Me Back to Eden was amazing. I think their early stuff was
Yeah, early
really
stuff
good, really
for
good
sure.
stuff. I think that and I understand the hate that they get. I do understand what people don't like about that style. I completely get it. But you're seeing imitation bands coming up,
Yeah,
by the dozens of them. If they
yeah.
so when you look at their cultural, and now of course we could be wrong, and it'll point to kind of ex like some new metal bands. You'll say like, oh, it's just that period of 2000 to 2005, and they sound exactly like. But the biggest new metal bands are huge still. They're still, like say what you want. I just saw System of a Down and Korn sell out an entire
Mm.
stadium here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Love corn, but
Mm.
I think Sleep Token right now, it's undeniable. You may not like this.
Sure, I
Many
agree.
metal fans may not like it's not metal, but that I think that has to be the obvious
Yeah,
choice.
I agree with that. Now, you live in the States, so this question is pertinent to you. What would your death row meal be?
Oof, my death row meal.
So I want a starter, I want a main course, I want as we say in the UK, a pudding, which you would say is a dessert.
You know what it is? Like I love dumplings. Like
Right.
I love dumplings. So like I'm from Eastern Europe
Oh,
originally.
right. Okay. Wait, whereabouts are you from Poland or?
So I'm actually Russian Ukrainian,
Oh,
half
yeah. Okay.
half.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I like there's a dish from that country like it's like a dumpling dish and I love it. It's so that would be like
Cool. Okay.
my meal, yeah.
The whole meal, there's dumplings.
Just dumplings.
Love that. Love that.
Just dumplings.
Now this is actually throwing me a curveball because I didn't know that history of you. But who do you think, obviously living in the States for probably most of your life, who has the best metal, US or Europe?
I'm biased towards Europe, and I will tell you this much. Some people always tell us, like, you don't even sound like a US band, you sound like a Euro band. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually kind of a compliment.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
I'm really biased towards Euro music. Speaking of like obviously from England, obviously you have Sleep Token, but bands like
Mm,
Tesseract, in terms like
mm,
in the past, like 10, 15 years, Architects, right?
yeah,
You have Rammstein, which is like I said, huge influence and other kind of like in terms of like Swedish death metal. So me personally, I've always gravitated a little bit more towards European bands. Not to say that obviously with Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails, and I do love U.S. music as well, of course,
mm,
a type of negative, but I always felt a little bit more European in my sound, and I've had
yeah,
fans
for
tell me that
sure.
as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely you can tell that. Now, what's on the bucket list for the band? What do you want to achieve? What do you without sounding like I'm interviewing you, what do you want to do in the next 5 years? What would be the greatest thing for you to do?
In a way, I'm just happy I'm here. To tell the truth, and right now there is a little bit of like
Stop being pragmatic. I want some dreams. Give me something. Come on.
well, I mean, of course, I'd love to play with some of these bands that I still look up to. There's a lot of bands that are up and coming, like Onto Others and stuff like that, that I would really love to get some shows in that I love the sound. Obviously, I mentioned the Browning. I saw them recently. I think, you want to eventually be able to kind of do this as a full-time living, right?
Of course, of
Uh,
course, of course.
so I think, if I can get to that point in the next 5 years, that would be
Mm.
amazing.
Result. Now, my last question, it's really important when I ask everyone this. What's the most used emoji in your phone?
It's got to be. It's either the boxing glove or the horns up.
Yeah, okay.
So
That sums up your life, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Listen, mate, thanks so much for joining me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck with 2026, and I can't wait to see where the band goes from there.
Dan, thank you so much.